I've been studying for many years now the involvement of women in religious movements that sit uncomfortably with a secular liberal framework. And most scholars in this field have focused their study on the why question. Why would women get involved in religious movements that go against their interest, that are against women's emancipation? And this has been called the turn to agency, because the way in which these scholars have then dealt with this question of why is to look for women's agency. So this turn to agency has been really important in the field of study of women and religion, because it comes against a tradition, a way of thinking in which women have been denied agency, have been denied to be a subject of their own, women in general, but this holds particularly true for pious women and also particularly for those religious traditions outside of Christianity. And this mode of thinking persists today. For instance, think of the debates about women wearing a headscarf, women donning the hijab. There often is a suggestion that they would do this out of a notion of false consciousness. They don't really know what they're doing, or they're being forced by others to do so. So the turn to agency does really important work in the field of women and religion, but it also comes with a set of problems. My research continues to explore a number of these problems, and in the book that I'm currently writing, I'm focusing on one case study, which is a Catholic Italian movement called Comunione e Liberazione. Comunione e Liberazione is a Catholic movement which emerged after the Second World War in Milan, in the north of Italy, and was really very much focused on, how they put it, reconstructing Christian presence in contemporary modern society. What I have learned thus far from this case study is that agency and choice, which is usually one of the crucial dimensions to prove somebody's agency, to show that they have a free choice, that those concepts might not be the best way to account for the experiences of the women that I was talking to. And I will give an example. Most of the women I spoke to were relatively young. They were students and just graduated, and they were at a moment in their life where a choice imposed itself between settling down and establishing a family or entering a more monastic form of life, which was part of the movement, where lay people took a number of vows and lived together in same-sex small communities, so kind of monastic form of life. And for the women I spoke to, this important moment could not be described in terms of choice. They spoke about vocation. Now, they used vocation both in relation to the monastic form of life, but also in relation to establishing a family as a kind of vocation. And choice and vocation are not the same things. Choice invokes this figure of the free, rational agent who has a number of choices and chooses freely, whereas vocation invokes another dimension of something that calls you, that interpellates you, and then you start responding to that. And this is how the young women I interviewed very much experienced that moment of struggling with trying to understand what their vocation was and how they could actually realize it. A very exciting part of the book project for me is that I'm going back now to the respondents I spoke 10 years ago, at the moment when they were struggling with understanding what their vocation was. So now I will be able to talk to them about how the vocation in their lives was, how it unfolded, how it played out, and how they understand their own capacity to act, their own agency in relation to that. And I believe that the study of pious women who don't actually claim the language of agency and of choice, who speak of their own capacity to act in quite different ways than we are used to in terms of choice, I believe that that will actually give us new insights on this agency debate and show us how the capacity to act occurs in many different ways, not only necessarily in our language of a liberal, secular framework.